Everyone knows why it is scary. It feeds on fear. Pennywise hunts children, becomes their worst nightmare, and devours their terror. That's the whole thing. That's the premise. That is what every video, every Reddit thread, every analysis for the last 40 years or so has told you. Very scary. Very dramatic. Also, not quite right. Here's the difference. The wrong premise has been running for 4 decades. Every adaptation, every breakdown, every think piece about Stephen King's It has been built on a foundation that is technically incorrect. And we all know that this is the fun part of being incorrect, being technically incorrect. Because of that, every lesson anyone ever drew from this story about fear, about facing it, about what it means to be afraid, has been pointing at the wrong thing. It doesn't feed on fear. Fear is just the spice. You are the meal. And once you understand what that actually means, the whole story changes. The book changes. The films change. Even Welcome to Derry changes. Pennywise changes. Because you stop looking at a monster that feeds on your terror and you start looking at a predator that is completely, utterly dependent on something only you can provide. Stay with me.
Welcome to Crypta Librorum, the hidden library where fear tells its tales. Let's open today's page and find out what fear has in store for us.
I want to talk about Stephen King's It today, the 1986 novel, the 90s miniseries, the 2017 and 2019 films, and of course the latest addition to that mythos, Welcome to Derry, which premiered last year and quietly answered questions the book left open for decades. Let's see what we will not be doing here today. Today, I will not tell you which version is best, because there is no such thing. Every version has its ups and downs. I'm not here to explain the plot either. I'm here because every single version of this story, from Tim Curry's dancing clown to Bill Skarsgård, Joe unhinging in a sewer clown, there is one thing nobody has named correctly. Also, fair warning, in this version there will be heavy spoilers here and there, so be warned. Also, like every video we do with this channel, fair warning, everything might be triggering to people because we talk about fears. And as a result of that, we could be touching possible trauma for some people. One thing that nobody has named correctly, let's see, what would that be? It's the thing King built the entire story around. Here is what we're going to search and hopefully discover. It is not a monster that made fear dangerous. It is a monster that revealed fear was already the most valuable thing you carry. It didn't create your fears, it found them. Went through your history like someone rifling through your belongings and pulled out exactly what it needed. Your fear was already there, already yours, already loaded. Pennywise just knew how to trigger. For those who might need the foundation, here it is fast. Stephen King's It, 1986. Derry, Maine, a town that has been quietly consuming children every 27 years for longer than anyone can remember. 7 kids form what they call the Losers Club. They face something ancient and awful living under the city. They think they beat it. 27 years later, Mike Hanlon, the only one who stayed in Derry, makes 6 phone calls. They come back, they finish it. That's the skeleton. The meat is everything underneath that. The story has been adapted 4 times. 1990, Tim Curry 2-part TV miniseries, the version that turned an entire generation against clowns and storm drains. 2017 and 2019, Bill Skarsgård 2 theatrical films, bigger budget, more visceral, updated timeline to 1980s. And 2025, Welcome to Derry, an HBO prequel series set in 1962, 27 years before the main story, with Skarsgård returning. That series ends with a deeply disturbing revelation about Richie Tozier, and we'll come back to that because what it reveals about Pennywise is the most unsettling thing in this entire franchise. Now, before we go anywhere else, you need to understand what it actually is. Because most people who have seen only the films thinks Pennywise is the monster. He's not. Pennywise is a costume. In the novel, it is an ancient, extra-dimensional entity, something that arrived on Earth in prehistoric times from somewhere beyond our universe entirely, and has been living under Derry ever since. It exists in something King calls the macroverse, a complete void that contains and surrounds our entire universe. Its true form lives in a space between dimensions called the deadlights. They're visible as pulsing orange light. If any human being looks directly at the deadlights, they go insane instantly and irreversibly. The human mind cannot fathom, understand, or process what it's seeing. So it doesn't show you what it is. It can't. It just translates itself. In the final battle of the novel, when it is forced into physical reality, stripped of its mask, cornered, dying, the form it finally collapses into is a giant spider, a female, pregnant, grotesquely, impossibly swollen spider. Because a spider is the closest shape our 3-dimensional reality can produce for something of his shape or her shape. It's what deadlights look like with legs. That image, that bloated, giant, pregnant spider as the true face of it, is the most honest thing in the entire book. An ancient hunger that has been feeding on children for too long, it has grown enormous with them. That's not a clown, That's not a werewolf or a mummy or a leper. That was under Terry the whole time. Also, the usage of the spider as an image implies that there is an entire web, an entire trap that gets what it needs to feed. And that trap comes in the form of the clown Pennywise. Now, everyone who has seen any version of this story knows the central rule: Pennywise feeds on fear. The 2017 film makes it explicit. The characters say it out loud: fear is what it wants. Fear is what it hunts. Fear is the point. Except, if we go back to the book and read it carefully, King says something slightly different. And that slight difference is everything. In the novel, King describes it as a predator, a physical one. It consumes children, not metaphorically, not psychically, physically. It needs sustenance. It needs to eat. That's the baseline. But here's the line that changes everything. King writes that fear, it discovered, was like a spice. It made the meat taste so much better. Not fear is the food, fear is the spice. It feeds on flesh. It kills because it's hungry. The fear is a preparation method, a way of seasoning your meal or your steak before consumption, which means everything Pennywise does, every nightmare it constructs, every personal horror it excavates from your history, every form it takes that makes your blood run cold, none of that is the point of the hunt. You were always the point of the hunt. The fear just made you tastier. Read that again. It does not need your terror to survive. It wants your terror because you're more enjoyable when you're terrified. Your fear is not what feeds the monster. Your fear is what makes the monster's meal worth having. This is not a small distinction, this is the entire story. Because if fear is the food, then the lesson is stop being afraid, become fearless and starve the monster. But if fear is the spice, then the question really becomes, why do you keep seasoning yourself? Where does the fear come from? Who put it there? And that is where each member of the Losers Club becomes the most important evidence in this book. But first, why a clown? Before we get to what it shows its children privately, we need to understand why it chose that particular public mask, because it didn't happen by accident. There's a psychological concept called the uncanny valley. Here's what it means. It's pretty simple. The closer something gets to looking human without being quite right, the more intensely unsettling it becomes. Not gradually more uncomfortable, but sharply wrong. A realistic robot that almost smiles correctly, a wax figure that almost breathes, a face with the right features in slightly wrong proportions. Clowns live in the uncanny valley permanently. The exaggerated makeup is designed to make you read emotion from a distance. Massive red smiles, huge eyes, painted on expression, but it masks the real face underneath. You can't read their actual eyes, you can't tell the real face underneath. You can't tell what they're truly feeling. Every social instinct you have for reading human faces, the instinct that kept your ancestors alive by identifying whether someone was safe, fires at a clown and comes back with nothing. The threat detection system does not know what to do, so it defaults to our favorite scared condition, shouting wrong, wrong, wrong. Now, King didn't choose the clown because of academic psychology. In a 2013 interview, King stated plainly that what children feared more than anything else was clowns. He'd originally conceived it as a troll under a bridge, the creature from Three Billy Goats Gruff. But walking across a bridge in Colorado, he asked himself, what if the troll lived beneath a city? In the sewers, in the dark? And what if it didn't look like a troll at all, but like something built to signal safety? Something literally designed to say, you can trust me. I'm here to make you laugh. Because he needed something worse than a troll. He needed that face put somewhere it absolutely did not belong. A clown at a birthday party? Expected. Safe. Even part of the ritual. A clown in a storm drain. In the dark. Holding a red balloon. Looking up at you. That's not a scary clown. That is a predator wearing a safety signal as a hunting lure. That's it, using the language of childhood joy as a weapon. The horror is not the makeup, is the betrayal. And that is exactly what it does to every single child it hunts. It finds the thing that should feel safe, a brother's face, a familiar home, a body that should be your own, and twists it. The clown is just the version it shows the whole town at once. What it shows each child alone is way more specific. Here's what Pennywise actually shows its children, not the poster version, the book version. Bill Dunborough, the leader, the stutterer, the one who lost his brother Georgie in the book's opening pages. It doesn't show Bill a clown, it shows him, Georgie, his dead little brother rising from the grave, reaching for him. Bill's fear is not a monster. It's a question he can't answer. Did I send him out to die? Beverly Mars. It appears as blood erupting from her bathroom sink, coating the ceiling, flooding the room. Her father can't see it. Only the kids can. Only Beverly can. Her fear is not about gore though. It's about growing up and becoming a woman, and eventually about her body becoming something her abusive father hopefully can't control. It's about violence living inside the walls of a home. She's not afraid of blood. She's afraid of what the blood means where she lives. Eddie Kasbrak, a leper, rotting, diseased, reaching for Eddie with ruined hands. Eddie's mother has spent his entire childhood convincing him his body is fragile, contaminated, and about to fail. It did not invent that fear. His mother built it brick by brick for years. Pennywise just gave it a face. Ben Hanscom, a mummy, rising from a frozen canal carrying balloons. What? A mummy carrying balloons. Ben is the new kid, the overweight kid, the one nobody really wants to be around. His fear is about being caught by the past. It's about death as something that was always coming for him before he even got to become something. Mike Hanlon, a giant prehistoric bird. It built it from two things Mike carried without knowing: a crow that had terrified him as a child, and a kaiju monster he'd seen in old movies. The bird isn't random. It found those two things in Mike and fused them into something enormous. Mike happens to be the only black kid in the Losers Club. His fear runs deeper than the bird's form. It is connected to a white supremacy group called the Main Legion of White Decency that burned down a black nightclub in Derry, killing almost everyone inside. Mike's father was there, and he survived. Mike only learns the full story as an adult, but it had been feeding on that wound for decades, even before Mike was born. It always hunts what is already there. Stan Uris. Two drowned children from the town's standpipe, their heads bent in wrong ways. Stan is the most logical of the losers, precise, ordered, deeply uncomfortable with things that do not follow rules. His fear is not death, it's wrongness of things. Things that violate the structure of how the world is supposed to work. It picked the one image that Stan's ordered mind could not file away. Richie Tozier, a werewolf specifically, and this is the detail 2017 film cut. A werewolf in a Letterman jacket with Richie's own name stitched on the chest. Let's stop here, because that detail is the entire thesis of the book in a single image. It didn't show Richie a monster, it showed Richie himself as the monster. The thing coming to destroy him wore his name. The predator was him. The thing he feared most wasn't something external. It was what he might be, what he might become, what he was hiding underneath the jokes and the noise and the impressions he used to keep everyone laughing so they'd never look too closely. Now, the 2017 film changed Richie's fear to clowns, to Pennywise, the same as everyone else's surface fear. Because nothing says coherent artistic vision like make everything match the poster. But this is what that change actually cost. It removed the most important evidence in the book. The werewolf with Richie's name on the jacket tells you that it is not projecting generic horror. It is reading you. It went through everything Richie carries and found the one thing he would never say aloud. In it, chapter 2, the film eventually gets there. Richie's deepest fear is being seen for who he actually is. The 2017 change made that story harder to tell, and the film spent its entire second chapter recovering ground the book had already covered in one image. The book is the deeper truth, the film is what happens when fear gets simplified into a brand. So here's the first correction. It does not create your fears, it finds them. Every single fear in that list, the guilt, the blood, the disease, the mummy, the prehistoric bird, the wrongness of physics, the werewolf with a name, was already there before Pennywise arrived. It was already built, already loaded and carried. The monster did not manufacture your nightmare. It just looked at what was you were already holding and said, yes, that one, I'll pick that one. Which means something that nobody in any adaptation has made explicit. Your fear belongs to you, not to it. Your history did give it the power to build them. Your family, your town, Derry did. Pennywise just recognized them on sight. It is not the source of anything, really. It's just a reader, a very old, very hungry reader who found your library and picked out the books it needed. But here's where it gets even worse, because while the children can see what it is doing, the adults cannot. This is the part of it that gets discussed least and matters most. The adults of Derry don't react. Children go missing, bodies turn up, violence happens in broad daylight, and the adults just shrug it off. They change the subject, they look away. One of the most disturbing sequences in the novel isn't in a monster scene. It's watching adults witness something terrible and simply not care. Then forget they saw it by the time they reach the end of the street. King is really explicit about why. It has been in Derry so long enough to develop a low-level psychic influence over the adult population, a subtle, constant pressure point that keeps them apathetic, incurious, indifferent to violence that should horrify them. And here's the question that the novel doesn't answer directly. And Welcome to Derry starts to. What made the adults susceptible in the first place? Children see it clearly. Adults don't. The difference though is not the age. It's suppression. Children still trust their fears. When something is wrong, they feel it, they see it, they understand, they name it, they run from it. Adults in Derry have spent years learning to suppress the signal, to rationalize, to talk themselves out of what their instincts told them. But is it really just Derry? Aren't we all ashamed to accept and name our fears out in the open? It, my friends, did not remove their fear. They removed it themselves. And once the alarms were off, it walked right through. The adults of Derry are not brave because it does not hunt them. It's because they're broken and they don't even know it. Welcome to Derry now adds one detail to the It mythology that the original novel never gave us, and it's the most disturbing thing in the entire franchise. Pennywise experienced time non-linearly. The series is set in 1962, 26 years before the Losers Club faces it for the first time. And Pennywise in 1962 is already responding to events that haven't happened yet. The series ends with it targeting a woman specifically because of who her future child will be, calling her by a last name she does not have yet, showing her a missing poster of a child who hasn't been born. That child will one day be one of the 7 people who kill it. It already knows it's going to die. Think about what that means. The ancient extra-dimensional pre-universal cosmic horror. The entity that has been feeding on dairy for longer than human memory is operating, allegedly started in 1962, out of fear. Fear of a group of children who will not exist for decades. Fear of what is coming. It is afraid, and it's doing exactly what it trains its victims to do, acting from that fear, being controlled by it, and letting it dictate every move. The monster that feeds on seasoned prey is itself seasoned. Has been seasoned for 26 years before the Losers Club ever existed even as an idea. It needed their fear to eat, and its own fear was eating it alive. Listen carefully. Here's how the Losers Club beats Pennywise. Not in the film simplifies it. In the book. Against common belief, they do not become fearless. They are terrified the entire time. Right up to the end, there are 7 people. There are 6 people who are deeply, completely afraid. The fear doesn't go away, it never does. What they do, the actual mechanism which they defeat it, is that they refuse to let the fear season them anymore. They mock Pennywise, they laugh at it, they call it names, diminish it, collapsing its forms through collective ridicule and refusal. It visibly weakens, the forms flicker to one another, its powers drop, because what Pennywise needed, the full chemical preparation that makes the prey worth consuming, they stopped providing. So now it has to figure out something. Are they still prey? And remember, this is not done by being brave. The key here is by being together, by having enough of each other that the fear lost the isolation. And without isolation, it couldn't ferment into what it needed. And I'm sure that you're wondering, hold on a minute. So, if they did not become fearless, how did they find the power to mock something that presented their fears? Think again. If they were together at the same time, in the same place, the thing that happened is the fear of one person does not mean that it's the fear of the others. So at any given point, one of the group was truly afraid because one of the forms that collapsing was what that person was afraid, where the unity they had was not afraid of that specific form. So no matter what it did, it could not battle an entire group of people at the same time, for the specific reason that one's fear is not necessarily the same fear that another one has. So the group as a group, and not in isolation, manage to help one another, again, not by overcoming their own fears, but by helping the person next to them with their fear. You were never just the prey, you were the entire kitchen. It needed you afraid and alone, because fear and isolation is the combination that produces the seasoning. Take away either one, take away the fear or take away the isolation, that recipe fails. 6 of the 7 losers survive. But what about the one who doesn't? Stan Uris remembered everything the moment Mike called when they're grown-ups. Every detail, completely intact, which sounds like a superpower until you realize what he did next. Stan goes to his bathroom, draws a bath, and writes it on the wall in his own blood. In the book, King gives you Stan's perspective in his final moments. He remembers everything: the standpipe, the dead children, every fear it showed him, every moment of it. He remembers it alone, in a house by himself, with a phone call that asked him to carry all of that back into a room with a monster. Stan's tragedy isn't that he remembered. The other 6 remembered too. Once they returned to Derry, Stan's tragedy is that he remembered without the others. The fear hit him so hard because he was alone. No one to witness it with him, no one to help him contain it, no one to laugh with him at the absurdity of a dancing clown terrorizing children in a main sewer. Just Stan and the memory and the full weight of what they faced. Fear plus isolation, the exact combination it needs to destroy someone. Stan understood this, by the way. In the novel, there is an implication that Stan chooses to end his life specifically so that his fear, which he knew would become overwhelming, which he knew that he could not carry back without fracturing and without weakening the group, he decided to remove himself from the equation and let the others who could finish it. Stan did not lose to it. But is that really a win? What we know for a fact is that Stan truly lost to isolation, not to it. So what does any of this mean for you? Truly, it can become any of your fears. Remember though, it's your fears, not a menu it wrote. They're a history you lived. Bill's guilt came from a real loss. Beverly's blood came from a real home. Eddie's disease came from a real mother. Rich's werewolf wore a real name. Whatever form your fear takes, whatever face it's wearing right now, it's pointing at something that actually happened to you, something that truly hurt, something that truly troubled you, something your history built before any monster, quote unquote, showed up to take advantage of it. Now, let me be totally clear, that's not a weakness, that's a record. Looking at what your fear is pointing at. Second, find out if you're seasoning yourself. Because if you're seasoning yourself, you might attract monsters like it. Fear plus isolation is the recipe. Which one can you actually change right now, today as we speak? You can't always shut off the fear. Stan couldn't, and he was arguably the most rational person in the group. And in my personal opinion, we should never shut off the fear. We should listen deeply to it and understand what it's talking about. But isolation, now, that is an option that it's easier to fix. Whatever you're carrying, carry it with someone with you. Carry it somewhere with witnesses. Third, the forms change, the source doesn't. Bill's fear looked like a dead child, his brother, and later looked like every piece of writing he was afraid would fail. Eddie's contamination fear looked like a leper and later looked like the marriage he couldn't leave. Same fear, people, different masks. When a new shape shows up, do not fight the shape. Ask what it's wearing the name of. What's stitched on that jacket you're wearing? Fourth, stop trying to kill the fear. That's not how the Losers Club won. Remember, their name is the Losers Club, and they won. They did not become fearless. They became readable enough to each other. So the next time a fear shows up in any new shape, do not ask, how do I make it stop? Ask, what is this the same as? You felt this before. Different mask, same wound. Find the wound. And with that, ask for help from your friends, from your people, from anyone really around you. And I mean anyone. That's the only fight worth having. Finding the actual trouble and finding actual people that would support you. 1986, Stephen King finished a novel about an ancient evil that eats children and gives it the most terrifying title in his catalog. Not the clown, not the shapeshifter, not that thing under Derry. It. Because the thing in the drain has no name, has no stable form, has no identity except the one it borrows from whatever you're already afraid of. It is nothing without your history, nothing without your specific, personal, lived-in collection of things that could hurt you. Without you, it is just an old hanger, in a faraway, dark place. 40 years later, for adaptation, billions of readers, an HBO series that premiered last year, proving this history is nowhere near finished. Pennywise is still and will continue to be the most recognizable monster in horror, no matter the form that you remember it with. Not because of what it is, because of what it found in us. It is one of the books that truly involves, includes, surrounds, and explains every fear that's, I believe, known to humankind. Your fear was always the most interesting thing in the room. It knew before you did. King knew before you did. The question is not whether you're still afraid. You are, that's fine, that's human, and that's the whole point. The question is whether you're eating alone tonight, because that's the only part of the recipe you can actually control. So, here's what I want you to do. Not subscribe, well, yeah, subscribe. But first, maybe, just maybe, call some of your friends to come around your place now and have a dinner together, watch a movie together, watch it together. Think about the last thing that scared you after you're done with your meal and your friends. Not a horror movie, something else. Drop it in the comments. In a simple way, what form would your version of it look like? What mask would that clown be wearing? You do not need to explain it, just name the mask or the form. Or you can just say hi, or what's your favorite King's novel, or were you really scared the first time you read or saw it? I'll see you in the comments.
If you made it this far, thank you. You're helping keep the light on for everyone still afraid of the dark. Subscribe, share the story, and I'll see you in the next chapter.